Hey, welcome back to the Pure Playbook. I'm Dr. Dustin Boston here with Dr. Nate Merhote, and this is going to be a cool episode. We are going to be reintroducing a little more on the Pure Athlete, but make sure you like and subscribe as we are set off in 2025 to continue to bring more content, more education. We have had a great end to 2024. We are having an even better start to 2025 as we are continuing to take care of student athletes, protect and build student athletes better. And the education that we're putting out and what's being demanded at this point is thriving and headed in a very sweet direction. So we're excited to reintroduce. So again, like, subscribe to the Pure Athlete. We've got a new website being launched here shortly as well. So make sure you check that out. But here we go. Let's go.
Yeah. So I'm going to take it from here. The topic of today is, what is the Pure Athlete? And again, like you said, we want to reintroduce this. We've had a lot of new student athletes coming into practice. We've had a lot of parents asking us questions, coaches, things like that. And we, just want to put it out there again because we're getting so many of those questions. We're going to go through this somewhat vague in a sense, just because we have some other podcasts coming up where we're going to get into more detail on some of the things that we're going to cover today, and a lot of other content, whether it's social media, blogs, Facebook posts, lives, different things like that, are all going to be tailored towards that. So you're going to see some trends here with a lot of the things that we're posting, but let's get into it. So I got a question for you.
Uh-oh. Is this going to be like interview status? Is that where we're headed?
It might be, but I think we'll turn it into something that's a little less interview. But
let's do it.
What is the Pure Athlete?
So the Pure Athlete, very, very simply, the Pure Athlete is all about protecting and building student athletes better. With all of the research that needs to change, or that is changing, the return to play, which we call return to sport, with us wanting to be on the front end of that, with what it looks like to have athlete care like the pros, the resources that student athletes and parents want, desire. They don't know where to go. They don't know who to trust. And so a lot of that was the basis on the brainchild that I had of knowing what I know with my career, knowing what I see, the passion for sports, knowing being on the chiropractic, in the healthcare side, in the performance rehabilitation side, with all of that and seeing what is happening in the statistics of these catastrophic injuries happening. And I was finally, after 3 or 4 years, 5 years into general family practice, I caught this passion, and God said, let's shift a little bit. And so that's where all that came for. But protecting and building student athletes better, giving elite level healthcare for student athletes and their parents that are trying to keep up, so that we can ask questions so that they can ask questions and really have a space where they can trust what they're hearing, what resources they have from a healthcare facility.
Yeah. So from a student athlete standpoint, I'm going to steal this from you, but it's literally knowing where to go and who to trust, which is something we say all the time. And you mentioned a little bit of research, and that's one of the things that we try to keep current with the Pure Athlete and everything that we're recommending, because it is always changing. So if we can keep the most up to date with how to evaluate, how to actually diagnose, how to treat, what's in the literature now, that sometimes it takes a couple years to get into even schooling. So if we can keep up with it now and in practice, we can kind of bypass that lag that oftentimes does happen with recommendations in healthcare. But back to the Pure Athlete, there are 3 pillars that basically make up the Pure Athlete. What are those 3 pillars?
Physical, mental, and relationships. So those are the 3 pillars. Anybody who knows anything about me, or if you're listening to this and been in the practice, there's a lot of 3s all over this practice. So the 3 pillars being physical, mental, and relationships. And I picked those because I believe it takes care of about every facet of being a student athlete, and really in life. There's more to being a student athlete. There's life after sport. You're still a person. Your identity is not wrapped in the number. There is injuries that happen. There are relationships you need to curate. How do you mentally, as a student athlete, not only in sport or wrapped around an injury, but significant others? How do you deal with teachers, people that you don't prefer to be around? Like, there is so much there. And that's probably my biggest passion through all of this, because you bring the healthcare side, you help them prepare, perform, recover better. You help eliminate injuries. Like, that's all awesome and very necessary, but I don't think we talk about the mental side enough either. And we definitely don't talk about the relational side either. So a lot of these kids being able to shake hands, look people in the eye. How do you have a conversations? What questions do I ask? So those 3 pillars we talk about throughout the practice, and it starts with the physical side. How do we prevent better? How do we prevent these catastrophic injuries better? How do we build them better? And then we are able to throughout and really show our mission, which I think sets us apart as a healthcare facility, of the mental side. Like, we see you. And if I can here real quick, I'm just going to go ahead and tell a story of what happened last night with a call that I had from a softball player from over 100 miles away. And they're coming in tomorrow at the time of this recording, where they're coming in tomorrow to do our pure athlete evaluation. As we, just imagine being on a call with a healthcare professional that has taken time out of their evening to talk to you, your mom, your dad, your family, or for us to talk to your student athlete. And so we had this call last night, and the first thing I went through was I talked to the softball player, asked her what's going on, and I heard her and I listened. And I said at the very end of this, she's a dual sport athlete. She's going to play softball in college. She's a wrestler too, and they're going into districts and into state. And I found out she's that level, like she could be staring down state. And with this labrum injury she's having, nobody's really given her any answers. And she's considering, like, well, I'm just going to forego the rest of my wrestling season. And that way I don't hinder myself going into college to play softball. And immediately I interjected and was like, hey, I was like, it sounds like this is a bigger deal for you. I was like, tell me more here. And she started welling up because there's a mental component to this. I was like, I don't believe you want to shut that down because of this injury. And so we talked about that in the pure athlete evaluation. And so, but immediately I was able to speak on the mental side and look at, and that's what I want us to do. And that's what we do here, because then we can start to build the relationship. So very quickly we go from physical, mental relationship, just as we engage these athletes and their parents from day one. So that's just a quick story on like the intentionality of what the pure athlete is and should be when it comes to delivering healthcare to student athletes and for their parents. Because like you said at the beginning, and I'm kind of proud to have instilled that from the beginning, is they don't know where to go and they don't know who to trust. And they all said, I was like, and I think that's why you're talking and speaking to us. And they're like, bingo, nobody has helped and even had this conversation yet. So
yeah. That's a great real life story. Just recently happened of kind of what the pure athlete entails, even before you step your foot into the door. But I do want to pull back and go more into the 3 pillars again, and just literally from your eyes and how you see it, give me a 1-sentence summary of what the mental pillar is. I know that's hard for you.
Yeah.
A little long-winded sometimes, but give me a one sentence summary of what the mental pillar means to you.
This is hard.
I'm going to ask the same question for the other 2.
I had a feeling. The mental pillar is making sure that the student athlete remembers that and is treated like a person,
not a number,
and protecting them mentally so that they can prepare, perform, and curate as best as possible going forward, and knowing that they're not alone in anything that they're going through. So those are a lot of semicolons and commas there. Okay. So just a very long sentence.
Yeah. So same question, physical pillar.
Yeah.
Give me a 1-sentence rundown.
The physical pillar is all about building and protecting student athletes better, period.
Perfect. And relationships.
Student athletes need to know how to build relationships. You never know who is watching. You never know who you'll meet. And knowing how to shake a hand and speak and curate relationships, not only in sport, will get you wherever you need to go. And they need to learn that sooner.
So we will go in more depth to give you a little bit more wind to release some of your thoughts on each pillar in the next podcast to come. But that's a good summary of all those. One thing that I do want to hone in a little bit on the actual physical pillar itself is the pure athlete evaluation, and giving us a summary of what that entails. Because if they're coming into the office, they're receiving the evaluation. That's one of the reasons why we want them in here in the first place. But what does that entail?
So the pure athlete evaluation we have to figure out how to literally build and protect athletes better. With how these athletes are built versus when we were in school 10, 15, 20 years ago now. And a lot of even parents who, it's crazy to think we're all in that same realm now. Like we could very well have high school kids, but even those parents are like, yeah, I wish I would have had that too. So the pure athlete evaluation is a lattice coming of just that evaluations, where it's structural and neurological evaluation. You have a physical and structural evaluation, neurological and ortho evaluation. You have data, literally technology that we hook playbook to these student athletes. And of course, you get an overall view of, I'm not even going to call it a health history. I'm going to call it a history of the athlete, of what injuries have you had, what sports do you play, what positions do you play, what are your grades like, what are your intentions and goals, where do you see this going? And we take all of that, but the physical evaluation itself gives us an opportunity to see inside and out. And I'm very quickly going to say the biggest thing that nobody has looked at in entirety yet with these student athletes is structure. Like, it's like, oh, we can do this on the table and we can, it's like, no, we have a structural evaluation with digital x-rays and motion study films that we can take. So we take all of that information and we're able to create a report to show injury susceptibility. The technology who has brought, somebody put me, a gal that used to work here, she's an athletic trainer, introduced me to this technology that Dr. Trent Nessler had come up with, who's a good friend of ours, that we're collaborating so we can deliver this report and be like, here's the susceptibilities. We're on the front end of creating our own upper extremity, which we're releasing this week, tomorrow. And so now it's like, okay, hip labrums, ACLs, meniscus, ankle injuries, Achilles, rotator cuff, UCL, concussion susceptibility. Have you had a concussion? SCAT, and literally doing a foundational concussion baseline. That way, again, I guess it might be the best one-liner we've ever come up with, is literally protecting and building student athletes better. Because at the end of the day, this is where the mental side comes in, is I want to prevent any opportunity that they have not to achieve whatever goals that they have, want, and dream from an injury that could have been prevented. Right. Turf's changing, they're changing, the resources need to change. And so that pure athlete evaluation gives us a whole 364D view of the athlete. We go through the report, cast it on the screen, give them, and now we clinically know what needs to change. How can we build you better? What trainers are you working with? What PT are you going through for some sort of rehab? Here's the information that now we can share with whoever is in their circle of training or healthcare to build them better, because this is all about also collaborating with those healthcare providers so we can all do this together. It's not just about us.
So you touched a lot on the physical components of the evaluation, with the structure neurological stuff that we do, the data-driven points that we get, all of that. But a big piece that you didn't necessarily touch on is, one, kind of the conversation even before they step into the door. Sometimes that's with Sam, sometimes that's with you or myself, but also the consultation that happens in the office, addressing the mental and the relationship side of it. So from an evaluation standpoint, we hit all three pillars, as well as from a treatment and recommendation standpoint, we hit all three pillars. So it's every single facet of the pure athlete, no matter it's you calling in, you coming in for the evaluation, you actually doing stuff from what our recommendations are. We touch on all threes throughout the whole process. And not to get too much into it, but when we actually are giving recommendations and someone signs on as a pure athlete, it's not just giving you exercises and adjusting you and doing that. There's a lot of conversations that's happening in the office that's addressing specifically what that athlete needs from a mental standpoint, from relationship, from life skills even. And that's a big point that you didn't necessarily touch on, but I know is a big part of your heart and what you love to do in this office. But,
and if I can, real quick, I'll give you another component that I didn't talk about that was on the forefront of building the pure athlete and this evaluation on the relationship side and talking to the athlete, is like, at the end of that evaluation, I say, pretend parents aren't in the room, and is this something that you want to do? Right. Because we've already got their goals. I want to be a D1 player. Oh, I'm looking to go D3. This is rec for me. And then we know how to treat them and serve them where they're at based on what their goals are and what their parents have talked about. Because sometimes there's a gap between parents' desires, and this is a whole nother podcast,
right,
where the parents feel they're out and they have so much potential and he could and she could and they could and da-da-da. But until we ask them, it's like, what are their goals? Are we living vicariously through them? That happens a ton. And then parents go, oh, I didn't realize it till I realized it. And it's like, what are your goals? Cool. Now I know how to serve them. And then after the end of that, it's like, okay, if they're willing to invest in you and make sure that you have everything you need, if your parents are ready to take the next step, let me ask you, athlete, is this something you even want to do? Again, serving them where they're at. Because, and here's the point I was getting to. Part of the beginning of this was, I know, and we all know, and I love it when I say this to the student athletes, and they're like, yeah, you're right, is there's two people that they don't listen to first. And I'll give you guys a second to say it out loud. It's parents, and then their coaches. relationships too tight, spend a lot of time together, or maybe it's like, oh man, that coach, we've all had the coach where it's like, awesome guy, doesn't really know what they're talking about. We need to step some things up, or the relationship's too tight, whatever that is, home dynamic. Those are the two biggest things. And they all go, yeah. And so that's why this matters too, is it's like, we got to serve them and just call out what that is and bridge that gap.
All right. Last question I have for you is just to summarize it up. If you were to, in a sense, let's say we're playing a video game and you're building the pure athlete, like that is an actual person you're building. Describe what that person looks like. Not necessarily physically, but describe it.
So physically, because then you got to go by sport, right? Yeah, this is something I do want to roll out. It's like a player card, right? Attributes and skills. And if I was building the pure athlete, and I mean, if we're not talking like true physical attributes, what do you like? Not.
I mean, you could have like some type of physical attribute to it, but it's a well-rounded approach that we're taking. So what does that look like if someone's like, yeah, I want to be a pure athlete? In a sense, when they're in here and we're running through the evaluation, they sign on for care, we're considering them a pure athlete. But if it's like you're the poster child of the pure athlete,
I would say you put me on the spot. I reserve the right to change this at any time. Knee-jerk reaction is their mental and relational capabilities are very high, because I truly believe like you can build whatever you want. And I'm always on I'd love to take a C player and make him an A. Like I think it's not that it's easier to do that, but I think the number one most underrated tool, skill that a student athlete can have is mental and relational capabilities, because how to lead, or how to come through adversity, or am I strong enough here, or am I strong enough knowing I'm weak enough to say something to take care of that? And can I communicate with my team? Do I know how to hold a conversation? Do I, psychologically, can I get through that warfare and change perspectives and trajectories? Because at the end of the day, you do the pure athlete evaluation and we find that we can build the athlete, which even sport to sport, that's why we do this, is like, we'll do a pure athlete evaluation if you're going from football to basketball or basketball to swimming or whatever it is. That's a different physical attribute build. So I would say mental and relationals are high. I don't care where you fall on the physical would be where I would start, just broad.
For me, it is being coachable in all three pillars, because literally if you're coachable in all three pillars, we can get you where you need to be at all levels.
Yeah, 100%. Coachability, humility, and I want to say like diligence. I'll think of the word here in a second, but not commitment. Drive. What's
committed?
Yeah, commitment. Those would be the three I would. Yeah, 100%.
Like 97% commitment, 50%.
Yeah, I don't want one foot in, one foot out.
Yeah.
I call it whole ass. So when I tell people, it's like, what do you do at the pure, like, what's this pure athlete evaluation? I literally say it's a whole ass evaluation, because that came from, I don't want one foot in, one foot out. We do want commitment with whatever it is. And if this is rec for you, we're going to whole ass commit to you being a rec soccer player. Yeah. And so, but at the same time, if you want to be a D1, if you're a pro scout and in high school, then we're going to whole ass give you what we got too. So yeah.
Awesome. Last thing would be Sam's segment, if she's got anything for us today.
Hello, everyone. It is Super Bowl week here at the time that we're recording this. Right. It is Eagles Chiefs once again. So I just want your guys' thoughts on this particular Super Bowl. I know as Steelers fans, you really were rooting for them, and as was I, a new Steelers recruit, Can
we put them in the NFC?
Yeah.
Put one of them in the NFC?
Yeah, let's do that. Well, yeah. Well,
what do you think, Dr. Nate?
So I'm going to go on record on what I've said before in office, and that is...
Don't say it, Nate.
I'm going to say it. I said early on in the season that if the Chiefs get a first-round bye, they are going to make it to the Super Bowl, and they're going to lose. I said if they don't get a first-round bye, they'll still make playoffs with a wild card, and they would lose in the first round as a wild card. So they have made the playoffs with a first-round bye. They are in the Super Bowl now, so my prediction is that they are going to lose.
Who do you want to win?
The Steelers.
In the Super Bowl this year, 2025.
I mean, it's a lot of people are like, okay, a three-peat is neat because it's making history. On the other side, history would be Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley getting their first Super Bowl as well. So it's both To answer your question, the Eagles.
You took a page out of my book. You were getting long-winded there.
I was.
Dr. Justin?
Short answer. The Dr. Nate answer is I'm just not going to bet against Andy Reid and Mahomes.
That's my guy.
And Kelsey.
It's hard not to, yeah.
Right now, with the team that they have, they were hurt all year. Like, you can't, and the experience they have, and now they're healthy. I can't do it. Nothing against Jalen Hurts, but I've seen him fall apart before. Here's what I want to happen. The perfect game for me is Chiefs win by like 17. But Saquon rushes for like 200 yards. That's what I want to see. I want to see Saquon get, a touchdown or
And
two.
gets MVP.
I don't care who gets MVP. Yeah, 100%. Because if he's not going to get it in the regular season,
he did.
He did.
Oh, did
He did, and he won Offensive Player of the Year. Yeah, and Jaden Daniels was Offensive Rookie of the Year. Woo! Go Commanders!
Where was I? Good for them.
Yeah, it happens right before the Pro Bowl, which who cares about the Pro Bowl anymore?
Yeah.
Kudos to NFL and everybody who voted, or however that works, or politics. It sounds like that worked out because, typically it has been quarterbacks, and there was no, if that was the case, if Josh Allen didn't win it, there's no way you can't. But I said all along, we talked about this, it's like, how is Saquon not?
Yeah.
New team, breaks the records, but that's what I would want to see. 200 yards plus out of Saquon, couple touchdowns, and I'd love to see the Chiefs win by 17. My prediction is there's going to be some turnovers in this game that are going to prevent your call from winning. I've just seen it too many times. It's kind of like Lamar Jackson, and it's like, man, I think Chiefs tighten it up and make it very hard, and he makes mistakes.
One thing I am looking forward to is the Doritos commercial.
Ooh.
Whatever that's going to be. They usually have a good one.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the Bud commercial with the Clydesdales and the dog.
Yeah, can we I will say, let's make Super Bowl commercials great again.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
90s.
Please.
Early
Yes.
2000s.
Yes.
The
NFL one from last year with all of the old players where they're throwing the football around. That was probably my favorite one from last year.
Sometimes they're just trying too hard now, it seems.
Stop trying to sell me something and just let me watch a funny commercial.
It'd also be really cool to see some of these big companies also incorporate small businesses into their commercials that maybe can't afford it. There's a concept that's right off the top. Yeah, hey, Budweiser, we'll drink your beer if you put the pure.
Yeah,
I drink your beer anyway.
Both St. Louis companies.
Yeah,
let's go.
But no, good question.
All right, wrap us up.
All right, well, how do you want me to wrap it up? You just want me to close it out, or you want me to say something inspiring? What do you want to do?
I want you to read the last sentence I have on here.
The last sentence. Yep. So here at the Pure Athlete, we're committed to protecting and building athletes better. Make sure you like and subscribe. We hope this has been informational. If you need anything from us, reach out. Myself, Dr. Nate, the practice. You can reach out to producer Sam as well. But let us be a resource for you and your student athletes. And we'll see you next time on the Pure Playbook. See ya.